Last question for this segment. How does this compare to other classes, both nationally and locally?
I think this is as good as any class BYU signed. Again, it's well-rounded. What I like about this class is the level of defensive backs they're bringing in. Usually BYU's just scrambling for whatever they can get from the junior college ranks. They got a guy, G. Pittman, top 10 cornerback in the state of California. BYU never gets guys like that. Non-LDS guy will be here 4 years. Gary Nagy, Stephen Thomas, just some phenomenal defensive back recruits, which is a position BYU's always struggling for, but not this year.
Let alone some local guys like Jordan Pendleton.
Yeah, Jordan Pendleton, I think, is a guy, we'll talk about him later, but he's a guy that could make a huge impact.
Absolutely.
They're losing some safeties next year. This is a guy who goes on a mission, comes back. He could be a star at that position.
Absolutely.
How does this compare to Utah's class? That's the big question for a lot of people. A lot of people in the conference and in Utah.
Well, go ahead.
Well, I mean, last year I know that Utah had a lot of the Utah camp. They had raved about, this great defensive line camp, this group that was coming in. While BYU was kind of quiet. They had guys like Ian Dulon come in, and it was relatively unknown. Of course, there was Romney Funga, who was well known, especially Southern California, and of course Matangi Tonga. This year, I think Utah is hurting. They're scrambling. Coach Whittingham missed out on all the top recruits in state. BYU wrapped those guys up early, got them to commit, like we mentioned earlier, in summer. But they're having a bit of a difficult time recruiting and bringing some kids in. I know they got a good wide receiver by the name of Brooks, I believe it is, a wide receiver out of Southern California. He's actually a fairly decent wide receiver. But BYU, hands down, there won't be any discussion about 9 out of 10 this year, definitely.
Yeah, it's interesting. Last year was the first time since I started covering recruiting that I felt Utah was actually getting in on the guys BYU usually gets and making some waves. This year, BYU they were after the local guys before Whittingham was even able to evaluate many of these kids. Yeah. The spin, all the Utah guys are, we didn't want these guys anyway. But BYU is getting every top local recruit. It's kind
of like the girl at the dance. You ask her to dance, she says no. You say that's okay. I didn't want to dance with you anyway.
Exactly. There you go.
That's that way we're recruiting, and all the coaches are going to tell you, we got the guys we wanted. Every coach will say that. In BYU, it's the proof comes 5 to 6 to 7 years later. For other schools, maybe 2 or 3 years later. But BYU's recruiting class is solid, as they've been saying, well-rounded. A lot of guys that could contribute either right away or down the line, and that's exactly what they want.
The interesting thing is a lot of times in covering recruiting, you find out when you talk to kids, hey, who's looking at you? Who's offered you? What schools are you interested in? And it was interesting this year because a lot of times kids such as G. Pittman and a lot of the other guys, Austin Jorgensen is another one, Ryan Kessman, wide receiver of California, said, "Oh yeah, well I committed to BYU but I got a call from Utah today." So they kind of came in a little late a lot of times, but it's just a compliment. This class is a compliment to the success of Bronco Mendenhall. He's having
the success of the team.
Absolutely, the success of the team, and of course, and also a reflection of his recruiting philosophy as well.
Well, I can't imagine Cougar fans will shed many tears over Utah not getting some of these guys. No. We're going to take a short break right now, but when we get back, we're going to talk specifically about what BYU got recruiting-wise on offense and on defense.